Welcome to another episode of The Nine, an era of transformation. I'm Ebony Brandon. In this episode, we speak to Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources, Cooperatives, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Sports, the Creative Economy, Entertainment and the Arts, Samal Duggings. With one of the largest ministries in Dr. Terence Drew's administration, Minister Duggings has proven to be well equipped for the task, having received the overwhelming support of the people of Constituency 4 after contesting the August 2022 elections on the Labour Party ticket. Minister Duggings hit the ground running, and his academic background in business and marketing, along with his personal passion for the arts, culture and agriculture, also made him the ideal candidate for the portfolio he acquired. And although he's one of the youngest members of Dr. Drew's cabinet, he has a long and well-established record of outstanding service within his community and constituency, where he's now able to expand upon to the benefit of the entire nation.
On the day I visited Minister Duggins in Bastille, he was already at his office, hard at work and busy taking meetings. I was happy to be able to talk with him, and the timing could not have been more perfect, as having settled into his new role, he was in an ideal position to now share both the state of affairs he met upon coming to office, as well as the progress he had made in turning around the areas under his watch. In 2017, long before his election, Minister Duggins became a farmer with the opening of Montreville Farms. Because of this, I thought agriculture was as good a place as any to begin our chat.
When we looked at the Ministry of Agriculture stepping in, there were a number of challenges. One, office space, because at the time stepping in, the prior minister would have been out of Nevis, and as such, the configuration of the office space was a huge challenge, and we got right to work on that. But outside of the office space, it was the fact that agriculture had, since sugar, not really represented a great deal of our immediate focus going forward, I would say. And so taking a ministry that was somewhat in the background for so long, almost 20 years, and bringing it to the forefront and telling people that this could be our new economic driver once again, you had a lot of persons who were, I guess, afraid. And again, just with anything else, people are afraid of change. And so that process of transformation was met with a lot of trepidation, internally and externally. And we had to realign people's vision as to what the new era of agriculture could be. And that was maybe the biggest challenge we had.
The minister explained that a significant obstacle he had to leap into action to dismantle was the stigma that has become attached to agriculture, both from an administrative point of view and in the minds of the public. Despite this initial setback, there were also very early successes he was able to claim, as he was enthusiastic about the work ahead of him.
The whole stigma of persons against agriculture was one of the main factors. But also within the ministry itself, and I guess it borders on that, I was told when I got there that even the staff structure, it was what it was, largely because as one of the ministries that were not maybe say a main focus, when persons had an issue with a staff member, it was sent them to agriculture. And so every other ministry that had issues, they transferred those issues to agriculture. And I had to inherit that and then find a new structure as to how to make that work effectively and efficiently and move the sector forward. So that was a challenge in of itself.
And moving forward, having hands-on knowledge of the industry and the challenges, some of which you've already identified, not just from an administrative point of view, but from the being on the ground, dealing with the animals, tending the plants, the monkeys, all of. What was your position coming in and strategy to correcting these deficiencies?
Yes, so once we got in, and we had a unique situation in my sense as well, because 2 days after being sworn in, the Prime Minister asked me to go and represent him in Trinidad at a heads of government delegation. And one of the main conversations at that conference was CARICOM's 25 by 25 agenda. And so 2 days, even before I had a chance to sit in my ministry, I was basically tasked with bringing this agenda up to speed. Now, I must also say, this agenda started back in 2020. And so here I am, halfway through the entire process, just learning about this agenda on a national platform and having to now realign Sinkis and Nevis to be able to meet this agenda in half of the time. But it also was a blessing too, because then it aligned the focus of me coming in as a minister, because now I'm 2 days in office. And so now I'm like, okay, I have a new agenda. And this is what we're going to focus on. Because at the end of the day, what does 25 by 25 really mean? Ultimately, yes, it means moving our import bill down by 25% by the year 2025. But ultimately, it means increasing productivity in the country. And so we can look at it from both sides. And having had that as a spearheading agenda, it was then to come back and find the right people, put them in the right places, look at the landscape, and an extremely vulnerable industry. You know, if the sun is too hot, it affects agriculture. If the place is too cold, it affects agriculture. If there's a hurricane, of course, it affects agriculture. If the wind is too strong, it affects agriculture. If there's not enough wind, it affects agriculture. And so you recognize that with that kind of vulnerability, you have to really dig in deep and find the right processes to make things work. And I think over the last 24 months, we've done quite a bit of work, and I'm quite pleased with the work coming out of agriculture right now.
How close are we to meeting the 25 by 25 goal? It's a few months away. 2025 is around the corner. You may not meet all the markers, but certainly I'm sure some significant progress has been made.
Oh yes, tremendous progress has been made. So we've analyzed agriculture all the way down to the T. We've looked at the entire value chain, soil preparation, what type of seeds, who should be planting the seeds for best impact, how do you transport that to the farms, who should be planting what crop based on expertise, how long the crops take to produce, what do you do during that production period, when do you harvest for best quality, what do you do with the harvest, where do you store it, what happens to the excess harvest, what markets do we have locally, regionally, and internationally? What byproducts could we produce? And so all of these things have been considered. And recognizing that, we recognize where there were shortfalls. We recognize where we have excess talent. And where all this will come together in an intricate puzzle piece to really drive the agenda forward. One of the things that we looked at as far as crop production is recognizing that there was not enough planting material to drive the sector in the time frame that we wanted. And that's why we imported over 400,000 banana and plantain slips, recognizing that that's a staple, it's also a fruit, and it's also one of the most consumed items in our diet. We also recognized then too that pineapples represented a huge opportunity in the region. And again, we imported over 100,000 pineapple slips as well. Recognizing that there are also gaps in tomato production, we went to task in that as well, and a number of other crops. We had about 13 crops that we really focused on. And that was because our climatic condition, our soil type, our people and their expertise were just right for these crops. And we could maximize across the region on these crops.
The 25 by 25 initiative involves not just St. Kitts and Nevis. It's a CARICOM-wide commitment to reducing the region's food import bill by 25% by 2025. The implementation of the CARICOM agri-food system strategy in the member states is expected to help achieve this target by giving special attention to priority crops and products such as corn, soya, rice, poultry, mutton, and beef, and niche vegetables, which together constitute the items most imported to the region. Minister Duggins said the pandemic drove home the importance of having a strong agriculture sector to ensure food security in times of crisis.
One COVID-19 pandemic really kind of opened most people's eyes to the importance of agriculture. Because when you're stuck on an island, there are many things that you can live without. Food is not one of them. and people recognizing that more and more these days. And so food security has become one of the focal points of any economic development going forward. The other thing, as you mentioned, is the vulnerability from global incidents such as the war with Russia and Ukraine. And that in and of itself also indicated to persons how vulnerable our food supply chain is, because a few boats being blocked on sea can cause an entire nation to starve. So how food secure are you becomes the question. And in St. Kitts and Nevis's case, we wanted to ensure that we can feed our people regardless of what is happening around the world and around us. And I think we are well on the way to achieving that with some of the initiatives that we've been putting in place. You know, Fidel Castro would have had a concept for Cuba that serves as a good foundational concept. If you have protein and you have starch, then you're in a good position to move your country forward. And that's why we were adamant that we have to have these starches. So the plantains and the bananas represented easy starches for us. We also focused in on a number of ground provisions as well, but we wanted something that the entire country could benefit from instantly. And these are crops that take 7 to 11 months. So you see how easily we could turn the whole production cycle over. And then outside of that, we are also focusing on our animal proteins. And so we would have collaborated with the Republic of China, Taiwan, in developing our own hatchery. And that is well on the way. And I am told that the birds should be on island in a matter of weeks. And our production should be ready to go to the public at around January of 2025. We should be supplying day old chicks to all farmers in St. Kitts and Nevis and beyond.
It was here that the recurring theme of Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew's goal to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state arose. Access to food and clean water are among the most basic human rights, and to develop a sustainable island state capable of nurturing healthy, educated, and productive members of society, who in turn are able to contribute to a thriving economy, all begins with ensuring food security. For Minister Duggins, this meant evaluating the country's available resources and determining how best to put them to use to guarantee sustainable output over the long run.
For us, we have a number of initiatives, and it was really all in the development of the sustainable island state, but also looking at all the factors. And like we said, climate resilience being one of the major ones. And so our greenhouse villages, we wanted to do something that was climate smart. We wanted something that was efficient in water usage, because we recognize that part of the difficulties we're facing now is less rainfall, which brings drought conditions. And we also wanted to do something that did not require as much land to yield the type of output that we deem necessary. So greenhouses were the ideal option. You use less land space, less water, and it is a bit more resistant to the climatic conditions. And so we decided to do the greenhouse villages, because we also recognizing that clustering them was the way to go, because now the amenities could be shared. And you could bring everything into a space where it's just more efficient, I would say. And so we have our greenhouse villages being erected now. And I am anticipating that, sometime within the upcoming months, we should be doing an opening ceremony for the greenhouse village. And that will see our local farmers being able to utilize its technology to produce food. But if we move on to something like the Barefoot Project, that project is designed to ensure that our farmers, livestock farmers, have the best quality animals. Because one of the things we also recognize is that the genetics on the island are, the quality of genetics not the best. And so what we've been doing is working along with a number of institutions, like Ross University and the One Health agenda. We've also been working along with Southern University as well. We've been working along with IECA, and we've been working along with the FAO and a number of other institutions to improve what we are doing on the island. And the Bayford's Livestock Center of Excellence is supposed to be that focal point for all livestock, where it become a breeding facility for all livestock, providing farmers now with the top line genetics so that their yield could be more productive. Because if you have the right animals on your farm, with the same work, you'll get more productivity out of them. And recognizing that, we wanted to focus on the real pain point, bringing in the right genetics, breeding the right genetics, and making sure that our farmers have a steady access to good animals, healthy animals that could produce, optimal for them.
Mm-hmm. And this also sort of ties into because there's a lot of cross-linking now between the ministries and your agendas syncing. It ties into what you're doing with the Ministry of Health, because all of this means that you'll have a healthier nation if you're producing your crops locally. Less pesticides are going to be used. You have better choices for options for fertilizers. You're encouraging people through the Ministry of Sport, for example, to have a healthy and active lifestyle. So we start getting our non-communicable diseases under control. How do all of these link with each other? You're even working with Minister Clark and her ministries there in terms of projects you have going on. How do all of these link for a better St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, that's the whole Sustainable Island State agenda, right? The whole idea behind of that is that all ministries, all areas, all pillars connect to form one sustainable island state. And agriculture being one of the fundamental pillars, food production and food security, we have to work along with all. And even on the basis of the One Health agenda, plant health, animal health, human health, and they're all intricately connected.
Once you have a well-fed population through agriculture, the next priority must be to keep our bodies, our machines, in good working order. One of the most important ways to do so is through physical activity and participation in sports. In the past, ministries of sport in the region have typically focused on supporting traditional sports and athletes. As time has passed, mind sports like chess have also been included. In recent years, however, focus has shifted significantly to include encouraging the public to engage in sports and other physical activities to improve health and reduce the concerning rise in non-communicable diseases like hypertension and diabetes. The risk of developing these diseases is higher among groups who do not lead physically active lives. In early 2023, the Commonwealth Secretariat's Sport for the Development and Peace Conference, Minister Duggins revealed that his ministry, in partnership with the National Sports Council, had implemented the National Sports Policy and Strategic Plan 2022 to 2026, which seeks to enhance the public's involvement in sports and physical activity. Minister Duggins realized one of the best ways to change the attitude toward embracing healthier lifestyles begins with children, and so he moved swiftly to reintroduce school sport tournaments, which had gone dormant for 7 years.
Sport is important for especially young people. It increases their focus. It ensures that they can develop into holistic human beings. Teamwork is something that you learn from playing sports. Strategic thinking, again, from playing sports. And when I recognized that for some, near 7 years in some cases, some of these sports were not being played in school, as a Minister of Sports, I could not have that. And so we went right to work in reintroducing these sports into these schools. And so football, in 2023, we reintroduced football into the schools. And in 2024, we were able to reintroduce cricket and netball into the schools, both primary and high school in our cases. And for us now, we want to continue that reintroduction process because we recognize that our young people need to lead active and healthy lives, psychologically, physically, and emotionally. And sports contributes to all the above.
They also create opportunities for career paths now, as we're seeing again. It was not something traditionally told to us by our parents was an option. It was could be a doctor, lawyer, whatever. But now we're seeing with examples like Michael Lewis, for example, and his brother, how sport can become a career.
Correct, and that is the other part to the equation. The fact that My ministries also represent fundamentally the diversification of our economy as well. You look at agriculture, you look at sports and the creative economy. And we've seen in the past, like Atiba Harris, who would have played for MLS football and done really well. And now more recently, we do have a number of persons that are still on the international field at play. But most recently, you mentioned as well, the Louis brothers, who have just recently been our first St. Kitts nationals to be able to play on the West Indies senior team. I'm delighted that this is taking place at such a time. But it represents, like you said, the idea of careers, alternative careers. So it's not just a doctor or a lawyer anymore. You can now be a cricketer. You can now be a football player. You can now be a netball player. You can now be the next Kim Collins.
Fostering world-class athletes begins in schools and communities through access to quality sports facilities. Unfortunately, over the 7 years preceding the Drew administration's coming to office, the upkeep and development of existing sports facilities was not a priority, causing many of them to fall into disrepair. The Minister of Sports explained that restoring sports facilities to optimal condition will take time and a significant injection of money. But this work has begun, with emphasis being placed, for now, on the country's major facilities.
The challenge that we have in St. Kitts, which has been our blessing as well, is that we have, in the Leeward Island, more sporting facilities in St. Kitts than all of the Leeward Islands combined. But that's a challenge, because we also now have more facilities to maintain than all of the Leeward Islands combined. And we have one budget to do so. And so we have had to make very conscious and deliberate efforts as far as what are we prioritizing. And among some of the priorities we've had to select would have been our national facilities. And so we would have done significant work on Warner Park Stadium. We are doing significant work on the Kim Collins Track Stadium. We are also about to begin significant work on the basketball stadium. And we continue now in the netball stadium as well. And you do have a number of other sports like tennis that we are going to be focusing on. We are looking to build a swimming facility, but recognizing that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that all of our communities have somewhere where people can go and play. It is one of, if not the most challenging aspect in sports, I would say, to find the monies to go back and undo all the damage that has been done over the last few years. And of course, for us going forward has been prioritization, because recognizing that you can't do all at once, you then go into the idea of, okay, what are the low-hanging fruits? And how do we use the scarce resource that we have for most impact? And so every year we identify a number of different facilities and we tackle those. And every budget we tackle another set. And so far we've been able to do quite a bit. We've been able to do some work in St. Paul's, in Molyneux, in St. Peter's, in Newtown, in Halfway, in Challengers, and we could go through the island. There's so much that we've been able to do, but there's still a lot left to be done. And so in the next budget, then the Lime Keels and a few others, Sandy Point sporting facilities, are now coming as major priorities. But the idea is to say, you know, we can't do it all one time, but every year we do a bit more.
In September 2024, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis launched a 90-day campaign on citizen security and national consultations on crime and violence from a public health perspective. Given the whole of society approach the government has adopted in addressing crime, I asked Minister Duggings what role sport can play in reducing crime and violence and promoting conflict resolution.
Significant, because again, sports engages the individual physically, emotionally, psychologically. And so once someone finds that sport of passion, it is easier to reach them on a holistic level. And that is why we have been doing the summer camps that we have been doing for the children, because we recognize that if we capture them early, then they're less likely to go into a life of crime or violence. And that has been working, starting from the ground up. But we also recognize that even our young men that are somewhat, involved in some of these activities, that if we position them around their passions, make sure that these young men are doing what they're passionate about, then they start to involve themselves in these deviant behaviors less and less. And so sports like football, basketball have become priority for us in the communities, so that we could try to capture some of these persons and not have them idle and going into a life of crime.
From regional youth athletics and cricket to motorsport meets and major activities including the CONCACAF Caribbean Club Shield Games, the 60, and Caribbean Premier League cricket, sports have become a significant driver of tourism and as a result a major contributor to the country's economy. In 2022, the global sport tourism market was valued at US $587.9 billion, according to Grand View Research. And according to the World Trade Organization, sport contributes around 10% of the world's expenditure on tourism and was projected to have an estimated growth rate of 17.5% between 2023 and 2030. The St. Kitts and Nevis government is very aware of this potential and is positioning the country to further tap into this economic windfall.
Last year in 2023, actually it was 2022, but we hosted for the first time ever in the world the 60 tournament. And that was something new that we introduced. And of course we have the CPL tournament. And all of these come together to form what I would say the right blend for our sports tourism product. Because what you have here is visitors coming in to look at these games, whether it's the team or the spectator. And then you also have your facilities being showcased to the international public and your environment. So people now feel like they know St. Kitts just from seeing it on TV. But also what is less recognized is the inspiration it brings to the young children. Because when you could see your favorite cricketer or your favorite footballer live, when you could see them in training and in practice and see that unique thing that they do that you probably never recognized from before, it gives you, in essence, some guidance as to what you can do to develop your own skills. And we've seen a lot of that come into play. Like we've been hosting CPL now for some years. And now we have our first cricketer on the West Indies. The connection there, We see not only on the male side, but we also had our first female cricketer in Jazara Claxton. That's now playing for the West Indies as well. And we saw our football team going to the Gold Cup for the first time. And so the intricate connection between the sports tourism aspect and us bringing these professionals to our shores and the inspiration it brings to our local athletes cannot be denied.
When you have all these people you've managed to bring to the country, we have to find ways to engage them while they're here. Sporting activities might be in the afternoon or at night. You're also Minister of Festivals.
Indeed.
So everything is just segueing into something else. As far as your ministry is concerned, the development of festivals, culture to the extent that you're involved in it, and the creatives, encouraging all of these people to know that they have a place that they can go to and where they're going to be respected. You have a great responsibility there because, again, these are non-traditional areas which we are now legitimizing through both legislation and the commitment the government is really showing towards these areas.
Yes, from the area of the creative economy, we have done significant work there, and I'm extremely proud of that area because it's one of my passions, yes. But beyond being one of my passions, it's also the area that I think our country has a great deal of potential for development and untapped potential. Now, we just saw the emergence of a Byron Messiah, and he's now a global phenomenon. Last year in 2023, he had the biggest song in the world, just about. But Byron Messiah is one of many of the talents we have on island. He was just one that broke through. And so my duty here is to ensure that the world recognizes the abundance of talent that St. Kitts and Nevis has. And through our sports tourism aspect, our general tourism, whenever someone is on the island, or whenever I am traveling, I make sure that people recognize that St. Kitts and Nevis has an abundance of talent. And I introduce them to our talent. I ensure that that talent is showcased in the best light. But the other part is, and as I mentioned in my own campaign, we need to export our talent. And so now, our objective is to make St. Kitts and Nevis' talent an export product.
How do we go about doing that? What are your ideas in terms of making that happen?
So we have taken a number of pathways toward that. And again, with everything that we have done, we have gone to study from the foundation so that we're not just building shaky infrastructures. We are building solid infrastructures. And so we recognize that training was one path. And ultimately this year, you see, we are launching the Creative Arts Convention. And that is a powerful conference that brings all of the global best to our shores to train our people. We've also recognized access to funding as an issue. And we created the Creative Arts Fund so that our artists and entertainers can tap into resources where there could be funding for their artistic development. But more directly, we have been working along with a number of promoters and even Byron Messiah himself to export our talent directly. Just 2023, Miami Carnival, St. Kitts and Nevis had the largest contingent there that they've ever had because our ministry supported our local talent to get there. We have, just recently, I had a wonderful moment at White Sands when I heard IMAC commented on stage. And he said he cannot tell the last time he slept in his own bed because he's been on the road for so long. That to me was a moment of success because here we are exporting talent. And I know over the next couple of weeks, we would see Dejour, Highlight. All of our bands are currently on tour almost. The Grandmasters Band and the Small Axe Band and New Vibes International. Beyond those, I could tell you our ambassador, DJ Terror, he's constantly on tour. Our very own sweet sister Sensia is constantly overseas. And these are the things that we aim to do, and we are seeing the successes, and I'm happy as a minister to be in a moment where most of our talented persons can say that 2, 3, 4, 5 or more times a year, they're playing at some international game. And that is our objective.
In July, I spoke with some representatives from your ministry, and they informed me that one of the things that you're actively working toward to help the artists and other creatives is with the problem they've been having over the years with securing P1 visas, which allow them to travel and work in the US. I was pleased to hear that this is something that you're actively working on. What progress are you making there, and why have you prioritized this where others have not?
Yes, again, we study it from the ground up. And wherever there's a challenge, our idea is to remove that challenge so that we can ensure that our artists get the best chance of going forward. And one of the challenges that we recognized was the access to those P1 visas. And we made sure that from a ministerial standpoint, we put every effort behind them to make that process much easier for them so that they can go out and represent us in the best way possible.
Clearly, this again comes down to the development of the orange economy, which is something that is relatively new for most of us thinking about it. But it is a multi-trillion-dollar business when we look at what it can generate, has generated, and has the capacity to generate. What are other ways that the administration is going to tap into it locally? I know there is some talk of developing a performing arts center here in Nevis, similar to the one that exists in Nevis, but perhaps on a larger scale, and one which can serve the entire nation.
Yes, so we've been making strides in a number of initiatives. The Creative Arts Center being one. But fundamentally, and even at the base layer of that, is intellectual property. And we would have seen where we had the World Intellectual Property leaders here. I think that would have been sometime in 2023. And they announced then that St. Kitts and Nevis launched the global first, which is the World Intellectual Property in sports, IP in sports. And that fundamentally brings our people to a place where we can now make money off of our intellectual property. And that's the fundamental part about the creative and the orange industry, is making money off your intellectual property. And the Creative Arts Center now becomes a home for the development of that. And our Creative Arts Center was something that I had committed from my first platform speech. In fact, even before politics, I created a home through Island Expressions for our creatives. And my whole objective then was to make sure that our creatives have a voice and have a space to hear that voice. And now as minister, I'm making sure to stamp that into our society. And I remember going to Dubai and having to go and have discussions about the possibility of a Creative Arts Center. And I'm happy today to see that that is well beyond possibility. We are actually now actively developing a Creative Arts Center. The land has been cleared, the plans have been drawn up, and we are getting ready now to actually break ground for this Creative Arts Center and get it going. I could tell you this, by all accounts, in 2024, if we break ground on this Creative Arts Center, as we are expected to, it will be the biggest and the best one in the entire Eastern Caribbean.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. How does this now tie into what your plans are for Sugar Mass? Because we have a performing arts center, we need to have some place for our local talent to be able to display it. And one of the biggest displays of talent and culture in St. Kitts and Nevis is Sugar Mass, now entering its 53rd year. You were minister, and everybody knows that you play mass every year. You're out on the road with your family and you're having a ball, so you're leading by example. What's the future of Sugar Mass?
So I've been the minister in charge of Sugar Mass for the last 2 years. And in 2022, it was noted at that time that that was the biggest and the best Sugar Mass that we've ever had. In 2023, it was then noted that that was the biggest and the best Sugar Mass that we've ever had. I hope for that trend to continue, and for 2024 to be the biggest and the best Sugar Mass that we've ever had, and every year going forward. And so you recognize the whole idea is to keep growing and becoming more and more successful. This year, to ensure that we have gone further afield in promoting Sugar Mass. And we just inked a deal with Sussex County Cricket Club. And we are now seeing Sugar Mass being advertised at Sussex Cricket. So all the pitch mats, the video screens, the banners, we're going to have a date there just to promote St. Kitts and Sugar Mass. And we've seen some traction coming in from that. We are also looking to have a number of countries sending charter flights with delegations of supporters to Sugar Mass. But the whole idea is to make sure that our carnival product is recognized globally, and also to make sure that our artists and practitioners are prepared. And in that regard, we are also doing a number of training sessions for our cultural practitioners, because that's one of the areas I think we have a unique position. Our masquerades, our makajumbis, our clowns, our actors, our mummies, and so forth. They have a phenomenal role to play in the product. Yes, we do have the Ultra and the Lux and so forth that play their role, but we cannot forget the culture. And that's why every year, I pick a cultural art form and I do a different one every year. So last year I was Makajumbi. I did the clowns the year before, and I'm being asked to do the actor this year. Not sure how that one will work, but I'm looking forward to see where we go from here.
That sounds good. And you know, I'm glad you mentioned all of these things because when you look at carnivals throughout the region, although like you said, the Luxes and the Ultras certainly have their place and they play a role in the evolution of the festival, but a lot of them have deviated away from their cultural roots and what it really represents for us as a community. So the actors and the Mokajumbis and all of these people, the John Bulls, they have gone missing. Why do you think St. Kitts and Nevis has remained? And I say Nevis too because Culturama is exactly that, is a festival of culture.
Yes.
How is it that St. Kitts and Nevis had stayed so close to its roots in Carnival when other countries have gone off and you see some really disturbing videos of, you know, when this should be something wholesome and family-oriented, community-oriented, we see these videos pop up from time to time. That doesn't happen here, really.
Well, for us, I think we appreciate and we love our culture. And even as Minister of Culture, I recently got back from a conference. And one of the things that was highlighted in that conference is that St. Kitts and Nevis was leading on the tangible cultural heritage preservation and documentation. And we are now leading on the intangible cultural heritage preservation and documentation. So we are the first one in the Caribbean, in the English-speaking Caribbean, to be leading in developing a policy for it. And that tells you where our mindset is, that this is important to us and we must preserve it and we must make sure that it is strengthened along the way. And I think that is just a national pride for us. We love our culture. And as a Minister of Culture, I am leading head on, steadfastly, and making sure that we document, preserve, and develop our cultural heritage.
I hope that continue. A lot of young people as well, because you look at these groups of culturalists and a lot of young people, they're not straying away. Whereas they're straying away in other areas, they're still deviating to this.
Oh yes.
Why is that?
Because at the end of the day, we make it cool. And as the minister, I recognize my responsibility as well. So that's why when you see the minister as a market jumpy, everybody else wants to be that as well, because if we could do it at the highest level, then why not? Mm-hmm. And I think leading by example is the biggest thing. And we've had our country lead by example. And I'm here to continue that lead.
This administration carved out a special place under Minister Duggins' portfolio to include the support and development of small businesses and creating an environment in which entrepreneurs can thrive. Having been an entrepreneur for most of his career before coming to office and understanding the challenges small business owners face, Minister Duggins believes this is critical to the goal of achieving a sustainable island state.
Now, one of the things for me with the area of entrepreneurship is fundamentally understanding that intricate development of what it should be. And I know it a bit more because I've lived my life as an entrepreneur prior to being in office. And having been there, you kind of understand the challenges firsthand. And these challenges vary, but fundamentally and at the core, it is one, training and understanding of the field, because to be able to wake up every day, create an idea, take that idea, institutionalize that idea, work within a system, go out and sell that idea, go back and try to collect revenue from the sales that you've made, then have to go and account for that and document that and put it through the system. And it is a lot of work for an individual. However, with the right training, it can be done. And we wanted to make sure that that was a focal point for us in the development, training. And so every month, since we've launched that ministry, we've had training sessions for our entrepreneurs. The other area is access to funding. And we wanted to make sure that our entrepreneurs have access to funding. And so we have done a number of initiatives. For Independence 40, we launched the 40/40 grant initiative. We have 40 entrepreneurs were given development grants for their businesses, and that went over very well. We also are working with the National Bank for the launch of a loan program tailored to young entrepreneurs and persons who are interested in developing businesses. And so when you put all of this together, you recognize that with the right training, with access to funding, and we are also ensuring that there are access to markets locally and internationally. And we've done some marketing workshops, we've done export readiness workshops, and we've done introduction to some of the international and global markets to our entrepreneurs. But putting that web together, you train our people, you make sure they have access to funding, and then you make sure that they have access to markets, which then kind of brings it all together, that they could now put their products in the right places.
And sometimes I don't think we realize the importance of small businesses to an economy. So I think you really have a huge responsibility there in fostering their survivability as well. How important really are small and micro businesses to our economy here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Small, medium, and micro businesses are the backbone to any economy. Because when that small business owner makes $1, that dollar then is recirculated back into the society. That feeds a family, that takes care of a rural urban household, that puts children to school, that pays medical expenses. That is the essence of a small business. It takes care of our people. And so at the end of the day, that's the backbone to our survivability as a country and our development as a sustainable island state. And so for me, I'm very determined to make sure that our small businesses get the respect due. Yes, we invite large companies and corporations. You need them as well. But no society can survive properly without a strong small business sector. And I am here to make sure to continue that development and strengthen that as much as we can.
With such great national responsibility, I was happy to learn that Mr. Duggins has remained extremely active in his constituency and has successfully managed to strike the delicate balance between his ministerial responsibilities and those as the parliamentary representative for constituency number 4. A smile washed over his face as he acknowledged his constituents as the ones who made it possible for him to serve both them and the nation.
My people in number 4 are the reason that I'm here. And as a reason that I'm here, I'm always ensuring that I put them in a very pivotal position of my focus. Now, one of the things that I committed to my people was to bring a different type of politics. And so that is why after we won the election in 2022 in August, and we had settled in and celebrated independence in September, by October, I was back in my office doing one-on-one sessions every week. Because far too long in some of the cases we've seen, after ministers are elected, you don't see them for another 3-4 years. I was adamant that that would not be me. And so there's not a week unless I have overseas engagement and I'm not in my constituency, one place or another. I also ensure that we build the fabric of the community. And so that is why, for me, even as the sponsor of the Old Road Jets Football Club, I am not just there as a financial partner. I'm at every game. I'm in the audience roaring with the rest of the community for the team. And that for me is a fundamental part of ensuring that we put the right emphasis in the right places, because sports again is one of those areas that build communities. And we've seen that with the Jets, but not just with the Jets. We recognize that with our basketball team, who has advanced from First Division to Premier Division this year. And again, I was at most of the games and I was there. And even if I was the only person from the community, I would be the only person there, and I'm cheering for the team because I believe these are fundamental aspects. And we want to continue building on that. But not just that, we have one of the longest running and, as they said, the most exciting domino tournament in the country. And again, that is something that I stand behind, to make sure that the community comes together. When it comes to even just the development of facilities and our people and scholarships, because I do as well the Find Your Passion Scholarship Program. And every year we give scholarships to young individuals, promising individuals, and make sure that their pathway through school and academics is much easier and much better just by, supporting them. And we take them out and show them the world in terms of different sessions. We had sessions where they practice etiquette and learn how to eat amongst, dignitaries. We've had sessions on their own passions. Who wanted to be makeup artists, we sent them there. Marine biologists, we went and took them around the coastline and had, snorkeling sessions and training sessions in different marine developments happening in St. Kitts and Nevis. But these are the things we do for the community. And I am always present as much as I can, physically possible, because I'm only one individual and I can't be everywhere at once. But where I can, I ensure. But I can tell you, there's not much past a week that I'm not somewhere among my people in the constituency.
A life of service often means great personal sacrifice. As a husband and a father raising a young family, national service has meant that at times these sacrifices are deeply personal. He was happy to share with me, however, that he's been able to balance his public and private life.
It's a significant sacrifice in terms of quality time with family. There's a sacrifice of your own, because of course fatigue plays a role as well. But what I could say is also a different perspective when you actually love what you do. And I think loving what I do, it becomes a tad bit easier. So it's not strenuous for me to go and enjoy the football game. I actually love it. I go there with pride and passion, and I'm upset when I have to miss one. And so when you love what you do, it takes a different tone to how you look at the sacrifices made. It is a sacrifice. But the other part is, when I'm at the game, my wife and my son, they're there with me. And so at the end of the day, at least everyone could celebrate together.
Time waits on no man, and very shortly, in 2025, the Dr. Terence Drew government will mark the midway point of its 5-year term in office. Minister Duggins told me his focus is to amplify the significant momentum his ministries have been able to generate and maintain focus on delivering for the people of Constituency 4, as well as for all Kittitians and Innovations.
The way forward for me is a lot of what we've been doing, just intensifying effort. Again, we are in the constituency at least once a week. We may improve the quantity of time, yes, but we'll always be there. The way forward means really putting some of these projects in full swing and full motion, because there's so much things that you want to do. But of course, time is one of the factors. And not just time to say the 24 hours in a day, but also recognizing that everything has a process, from planning, getting resources together, to executing. And we are now at the stage where we're ready to execute a number of projects. I know a lot of persons in the constituency would love to become homeowners, and we are seeing that project rolling out now. A number of persons in the constituency would want to have scholarships and be trained in different areas, and we're rolling out some of those projects as well. So for me, a lot of what we're focusing on is really getting down to the people and those desires to elevate their lives in different ways and meaningful ways, and we are really going hard on that over the next 2.5 years.
Samal Duggins, at his very young age, has lived a life dedicated to service, the service of his fellow man, as a teacher, in business by creating employment, and now as a government minister. As we ended our conversation, I asked him about the legacy he hopes to leave on the country and the community he has committed his life to.
I better St. Kitts and Nevis. I think from our personality and character traits down to our aesthetic beauty, and it's, you know, just the development of the country. I want to know that it was left better than I met it. And most importantly, to be a man of his word. You know, I often go back to my first platform presentation as a candidate and ensure that everything that I said, that I remain committed to that. And that for me is a focal point, because in launching as a candidate, I wanted to make sure that I was very deliberate in what I expect to be to the people. And in being as deliberate in that sense, it then formed a ballast for me. Because now every time I feel like I need that inspiration, I go back to that speech and be reminded of why I'm here. And every day as I wake up to work, I'm reminded of what I have to do for the people. And for me, accomplishing that and the people being able to benefit from the results of that accomplishment would be an ideal legacy for me. A man of his word that has left the country better than he met it.
That was a very fitting way to end this episode of The Nine, an era of transformation, as we continue our conversations with the 8 men and women assembled by Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew to lead St. Kitts and Nevis into a bright and prosperous future. I wish to thank the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources, Cooperatives, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Sports and the Creative Economy, Entertainments and the Arts, Samal Duggings, for his time and candor. Until next time, I'm Ebony Brandon.